Welcome to this rapid revision video focused on paper 2. This time we're looking at superpower relations and question 3. Explain the importance of one thing to another. For this question you'll actually have to answer two different 8-mark questions, and we'll have a look at that in a moment. Let's consider how the Pearson Edexcel paper 2 is actually structured. It's traditionally split in two. There's a British depth study, for example Anglo-Saxon and Norman England 1060 to 1087, and then there's a European or wider world depth study, e.g. Superpower Relations 1941 to 1991, and that's going to be the focus of this video. In the past, these have been provided as separate booklets, answered within the same exam, and I don't expect that to change in 2025. Total time, 1 hour and 50 minutes, and that's to complete both booklets, so make sure that you manage your time carefully. This is what question 3 will look like in the exam. You can see there are 3 bullet points and each one is an 8-mark question. But because you're answering 2 of these, the total for question 3 will be 16 marks. For this question, you'll need to choose the 2 questions that you are most confident about. You will then need to identify relevant and specific knowledge. So for the first question here, that would be relevant knowledge to the importance of the events in Hungary in 1956. You'll then need to explain how your chosen examples are important in relation to the issue in the question. And here the issue is the development of the Cold War. You can see that the other questions are similarly structured. The mark scheme here says that there are 8 marks for Area 2, which is the analysis of second order concepts like consequence and significance, and there are 8 marks for Area 1, that's your knowledge and understanding of features and characteristics. But remember that this question is worth 16 in total, but it's split into 2. So you can consider 4 marks for Area 1 and 4 marks for Area 2 in each part of the question that you're answering. So remember, the total is 16, but you'll be answering 2 questions. You should aim to spend about 24 minutes on this question, so 12 minutes per part. Let's have a quick look at the exam's mark scheme. Remember that question 3 is out of 16 marks in total, but as you can see on the mark scheme, it's marked out of 8. That is because each part of this particular question is marked separately. Let's compare level 2 and level 3. I've not bothered with level 1 because you want to aim higher than that. In level 2, you'll be showing an attempt to analyse importance, but compare that to level 3, where you'll be showing very clearly analysis of importance. Also in level 3, your answer will be coherent and logically structured, compared to level 2, where some passages may lack coherence and organisation, so it might just not make sense as you read it. Level 2 also says that you'll be showing some knowledge of and understanding of the period. Compare that to level 3, where you'll be showing good knowledge of the required features and characteristics of the period. So you'll have both better chosen and more logical examples chosen. Let's have a look at a sample answer now. Up at the top of the page before you write your answer, you should put a clear mark showing which question you are answering. It's really important you do this so that it's obvious to the examiner which part you're answering and what knowledge they should be crediting. A good structure for this, as it is in other answers, is point, example, explain and link. I'll show the different components of my paragraph with this colour coding. Let's start with the point. One way that events in Hungary were important for the development of the Cold War was Imre Nak tried to challenge Soviet dominance over Hungary, which was one of the Soviet satellite states. Nak had been chosen by Khrushchev in the hope that his appointment would deal with unrest in Hungary that had been the result of oppressive rule by the government and poor living standards for ordinary people. Nak wanted to introduce some political freedoms. However, Nak's reforms went further than Khrushchev was prepared to accept. When Nak took Hungary out of the Warsaw Pact in November 1956, Khrushchev sent troops and tanks into Hungary. 20,000 people died in the invasion, but Nak was removed from power. This was important for the development of the Cold War as it showed that the USSR was prepared to use force to keep satellite states within its influence. It also strengthened Khrushchev's power over the USSR, and this reduced any hopes that the Cold War would become less intense. So where am I picking up my marks for this first part of the answer? Well, I've got a mixture of AO1 and AO2 in my point because it is relevant and I'm beginning to explain. I'm providing additional knowledge and detail in the example and doing the same but with more explanation in the green section, explanation. The really important bit though is the purple section, which shows both knowledge and explanation. Notice what I've done at the start of that purple section. I've actually rephrased part of the question. This was important for the development of the Cold War. It reminds the examiner that I'm keeping my answer relevant. So far I've made a decent start with my answer. Now let's move on to another logical example to really nail down this question. You'll notice that I'll use exactly the same structure for this second paragraph. Another way that events in Hungary were important for the development of the Cold War was that the USA and UN looked weak because of their lack of action in response to Khrushchev's invasion. The West had used Radio Free Europe to encourage people in the satellite states to rise up against communism and the dominance of the USSR. However, when this had happened in Hungary, the West had failed to back up these messages and NATO decided not to oppose the invasion. They were unwilling to risk war to help a communist nation. This was important for the development of the Cold War, as it showed other satellite states that the West would not support them in overthrowing communist regimes. The West ended up looking weak because they had taken no strong action. Relations with the USSR deteriorated, and the lack of action undermined the USA's and NATO's claims to be defenders of democracy. And again, in that significant purple section, notice how I've reused a part of the question to really show the relevance of my explanation. There's plenty of both knowledge AO1 and explanation AO2 within this paragraph. And these two examples will be enough to get you the 8 marks. You shouldn't need to have a conclusion in here if you've put enough analysis and good examples into these 2 paragraphs. It's only worth 8 marks, so don't write too much, write just enough. Over to you. I've done the first one as an example, and now you can use exactly the same technique to answer the other 2 questions if you want some practice. Explain the importance of the Soviet invasion of Czechoslovakia in 1968 for relations between the US and the Soviet Union. Or the last one, the importance of Gorbachev's new thinking for Soviet control of Eastern Europe. Good luck if you're going to give these questions a go. Our final points. 8 mark explain the importance of one thing to another questions require similar AO1 and AO2 skills, that's knowledge and analysis skills, to 12 mark questions which you'll find in other papers. You will need specific knowledge of both issues mentioned within the question. You will need to explain importance, not just describe examples of what you know. Remember to link your explanations back to the question. You'll need to answer 2 of the 3 questions that you're given, choosing the ones you feel most confident about. That's the end of this video. I hope it's been useful to you, and if it has, please do like the video and consider subscribing to the channel. It's also truly the end of the Superpower Relations and Cold War video playlist now, so well done if you've got through the lot, and if you're taking your exams this year, the very best of luck. Goodbye.